As they wait for blood testing, worried Flint residents share water horror stories. By Casey Tolan in Fusion News. Adapted by Mr. Grail on April 12, 2016. Flint, Michigan. It's a question Flint residents have been asking each other for weeks. Have you been tested? As this city deals with finding out that residents were exposed to dangerous levels of lead in their tap water for years, while the government did nothing about it, locals are struggling to figure out if they and their families have been exposed. Here is a keyword box. The key words are bolded in this article. We can come back to these keywords when we see the bold terms in the article. Even small amounts of lead in the blood can have a lifelong impact on children's mental health and development. But most Flint residents don't know for sure if they or their children have gotten lead poisoning. Blood testing for lead isn't paid for by all insurance, and 14% of city residents are uninsured, according to census figures. Uninsured is bolded. Let's look back at our keyword box to figure out what it means. Uninsured. Not having insurance to pay for doctor bills. Uninsured. Let's read that sentence again. Blood testing for lead isn't paid for by all insurance, and 14% of city residents are uninsured or don't have insurance to pay for doctor bills, according to census figures. On Saturday, about 300 people packed into the city's Masonic Temple for a free blood testing event. A line snaked out the door, and families sat on the bright red carpet while they waited. Some had taken sick days from work to come and get tested, to figure out if they're really sick. A few floors down, an African drumming group was holding a practice, and the beats echoed up the stairs. The testing was paid for by Herbert Sanders, a lawyer from Detroit. People need to be tested, Sanders told me. People deserve to know their status, their children's status. Status is a bold word. We can look at for its definition in the key words box. Status. Status means whether someone has an illness or not. Let's read that sentence again. People need to be tested, Sanders told me. People deserve to know their status, or whether they have an illness or not, their children's status. Here's a photograph. Underneath the photograph, there's a caption. The caption tells us more about what's in the photograph. The caption says, Herbert Sanders, the lawyer who paid for the blood testing. The government has said that all Flint children under 6 years old should be tested, and the county health department is planning a series of free testing events. Just because a test comes back negative for lead doesn't mean you're healthy, though. Lead leaves the blood after 30 days, but stays behind in bones and tissues. Some doctors say officials should consider all of Flint's nearly 9,000 children to have been exposed. Patty Hart said she had been having problems with her legs, so 3 weeks ago she ran some water for a warm bath. She turned the tap on, walked away, and when she came back, her tub was full of dark brown water. Tap is in bold. It's one of our keywords. Tap means the faucet. So tap water is water that comes out of the faucet. It was disgusting, Hart said, passing around her phone to show the photo to people standing nearby. They're saying that the water is safe now. How can this be safe? The water doesn't look like that every day, Hart said. It's unpredictable, appearing totally clear some days, but smelling weird. This shouldn't happen in America. Hart said. Here's another photograph. Underneath is a caption. The caption says, Patty Hart shows a photo of her bathtub. Kevin Palmer, 38, said he was done with Flint. He was packing up his 5 kids and moving to Ohio, even though that meant losing $80,000 on his house. We're out of here, he said. One of his sons used to be very active, Palmer said, and now just comes home from school complaining about headaches. Palmer thinks it might have to do with lead poisoning, but none of his family has been tested, so he's really not sure. That's common. In Flint these days, any kind of medical problem, from aches to rashes to changes in behavior, seems like it might have to do with the water, like it might be lead poisoning. The testing event was scheduled to take place between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., and there were already people waiting outside when Sanders came by at 8:30. He had brought supplies to do 300 tests. By 10:30, a handwritten note had been taped to the front door. Sorry, blood testing over. When she walked up to the door and saw the sign, Elisa Shaver shouted out in frustration. I'm angry, Shaver said. They only have 300 tests for a city of 100,000? How are you supposed to know if your kids are safe? Her insurance doesn't cover blood testing for lead poisoning, Shaver said. She worries about her 5-year-old daughter, Madeline, who wore big red sunglasses and clutched a copy of Charlotte's Web. Shaver has been taking Madeline to shower at her mother's house, outside city limits, and the whole family has been affected. My dog went bald from drinking the tap water, Shaver said. Here's a photograph. Underneath the photograph there's a caption. That's Alicia and Madeline Shaver. Together we just read the article. As they wait for blood testing, worried Flint residents share water horror stories. Think to yourself, what did we just read? Can you summarize what we just read to someone in your group or to yourself? What were the main ideas of this article?